Tooth and Claw, aka the filler episode that introduces Torchwood as a running motif throughout the series, is certainly an interesting one to analyse critically. Originally, I wasn't planning on reviewing this episode, but after due consideration I thought, fuck it. Why not? Just as a quick update, I won't be reviewing Idiot's Lantern anymore as I watched it again the other day and god it was average. I hate talking about average Doctor Who episodes because I love praising the best and criticising the worst of Who, so average episodes are always a massive turn-off for me. So I've gone and created another poll. Go and check that out in the description and I'll see you all later. Bye! The episode begins by vaguely introducing us to a bunch of monks who seem somewhat conflicted about their intentions. And by conflicted, I mean confusing. In the 10 years of this episode's existence, I've never truly understood these monks aside from their intent of supporting and creating a monarch that's a lycanthrope. It would have been nice to know more about these monks and the reasons why they want what they want, but alas, these questions are left vague or unanswered. The opening fight scene confuses me even more though because it's just hilariously awful. Pyat Pri seems to think that the Fist of Man is what will defeat the housekeepers, despite most of the monks seem to use their staves or feet in combat. Then, through some bizarre psychic connection he has with the other monks, his hand magically strips all the others so they're in these bright orange martial arts outfits. I wonder if priests have similar powers that they use on little boys. Whoops! Too soon? I think at the time the BBC was going through a massive rethink with regards to fight sequences. Robin Hood was certainly just as guilty of this when it was released later in 2006, but the scenes always seem to be cut together like a Paul Greengrass film. Shaky cam, quick zooms and cuts. It can certainly work in films like The Bourne Supremacy, but fuck me, it just doesn't work in a show like Doctor Who. I cannot see what the fuck is going on here! Let's slow it down a bit so we can analyse this a bit more clearly. So the monks begin twirling their staves around for no other reason than intimidation, I presume. Then they throw them in the air while somersaulting over the housekeepers for the reason of getting behind them. Why? What was the advantage of this? All of this just looks so bloody ridiculous and unnecessary. Later on, the Doctor arrives in Scotland so the actor can use his natural accent. Rose gives it a go as well, only it sounds absolutely appalling and comes off as absolutely hilarious. I was planning on doing this review in a Scottish accent, but quite honestly, it would just remind me of all those times I've previously impersonated Stephen Moffat, only to then be reminded that the show isn't as good anymore due to the likes of him. Unfortunately, the humour kind of grinds to a halt right here because after that it just becomes the comedic equivalent of repetitive strain injury. The crude and childish jokes about Rose's nakedness and the constant reminding that Queen Victoria supposedly said "I am not amused" at one point is quite frankly not amusing. The set design and overall tone of the episode is quite commendable, however. The telescope room looks pretty cool and a lot of the other rooms inside the building look well thought out and fit the time period very well. The episode itself seems to be straying somewhat from the sparkly sci-fi adventures one tends to think of when the words Doctor Who spring to mind, as it is shown as something a lot darker and contained compared to the usual stories the show presents. There's a lot of contrast used in the cinematography of the episode, giving off a sense of foreboding as the episode progresses. Flexibility is certainly one of the aspects of Doctor Who I have really come to appreciate over the years, and the fact that we can go from a gigantic hospital in the year 5 billion in one episode to a dark house whose occupants are waiting to be devoured by a werewolf in the 19th century the next is just marvellous. This diversity of storytelling in the show has always intrigued me and is probably why I haven't stopped watching it yet, in that there could be a brilliant story awaiting us next week regardless of how awful the episode we just watched was. The host down in the cellar is pretty creepy. I've got to give it to Tom Smith for his brief appearance in the episode because even though he's stuck inside that cage, the wolf inside him is going to come out at some point, adding to this foreboding atmosphere displayed before our eyes. His still and chilling voice keeps the scenes in suspense, but those jarring and sudden movements raise the stakes even further by reminding the audience that he could could change at any moment. The transformation begins and panic begins to ensue where the cuts increase in pace. The dialogue becomes inaudible and then Father Angelo stops his prayer. Why the fuck the Queen's commander-in-chief is standing so close to him with a gun is beyond me, but then again, if he was miles away, I guess the monk could have just done one of those ridiculous slow-motion somersaults again and just knocked him out of the way. From here on, the episode pretty much just becomes a chase sequence as the protagonists try to escape the wolf. The music throughout the sequence is fantastic. It's exciting and has an absolutely brilliant melody playing throughout it. I do have to say, despite the age, there are some shots of the wolf that look pretty good. Unfortunately, of course, there are restrictions that come with this age, like the POV shots that have this horrible bright blue overtone when they can't be bothered to animate the animal coming towards the characters. When the beast comes towards Robert's wife and the servants, however, just look at this one actress who couldn't quite make it into the group huddle. I mean, seriously, you could have just had another take here. I cannot unsee this now. The Queen's commander then gets consumed in a very family-friendly way before the action is halted so we can talk about the jewel the Queen has in her pocket. I will say though that despite the dumbing down of all the murders in this episode, I find it quite interesting that the last flickering shots of the characters dying show the mouths of the screaming victim and the hungry wolf, fusing together the consumption and destruction of the dead. The Doctor then gives out a wibbly-wobbly timey-wimey excuse for why the wolf is allergic to mistletoe and then suggests the group start reading. How does this help in looking for an answer to killing werewolves exactly? One minute the Doctor is showering Robert's father with praise on how smart he was. Why doesn't he just pry out the rest of the information from within Robert before throwing random assortments of books at the people before putting some glasses on his face to make him look intellectual? Good job they found that book with the meteor crashing to Earth 300 years ago that may or may not have anything to do with their current situation. So the chase begins again and the wolf crashes through the ceiling where Rose just stops running to turn around and have a nice big look at it. Who on earth would commit such an act of lunacy? Convenience once again saves the day as the girls from the kitchen throw some mistletoe soup over the wolf's head and we return to the observatory room. Now I think the episode leaves us to assume that Prince Albert and Robert's father were both paranoid and smart enough to know how to kill a werewolf should one invade the homes of either family. This therefore allowed this plan to unfold as conveniently as it did, even if there weren't any strict contingency plans in that library for the characters to look at should that event ever happen. If they were so concerned with it happening, it's bloody fortunate the Doctor was there to operate the telescope, otherwise their work would have been for nothing as everybody would be dead. The episode does leave us on a mini cliffhanger with regards to whether or not the royal family are werewolves or not. I am inclined to think that they aren't, mainly because at no point in the episode did the beast actually touch the Queen, but also because it means the monk's plan would have been a success after all, nullifying all of the Doctor and Rose's efforts. This makes the semi-final scene with Rose and the Doctor very cringy because she did not get bitten. Will you two shut the fuck up? I've been leaving any mention of Pauline Collins to the end of the review because the last moments of this scene here are just terrible.
Now leave my world and never return.
Even though she was previously in Doctor Who 40 years before this episode's release, I feel that the knighting of the Doctor and Rose shows Victoria as more of a villain in these moments right here. Throughout the episode she's consistently decent. I can't really say she strays more from your typical regal figure with a stiff upper class voice and posture, but these last moments are just cringy as fuck. I wish she could have just delivered this like she was talking to a pile of mud with sheer disgust, but it looks like she's just telling them off like a parent scolding a child. Even though she murders and lies, she'll happily have a go at these two for fighting off the bad things in the universe. In the final scene, she unfortunately goes all villain mode on us again as she explains what she plans to do with the Torchwood house. At least it puts the Torchwood subplot into motion for the later episodes, but God, I honestly wouldn't have been surprised if the Queen just burst out into an evil witch cackle after saying that
Torchwood will be waiting.
So, did it suck? Like School Reunion, I can take it or leave it, to be honest. I liked that it strove for something a little different, like something out of folklore that's dark, gritty, and contained. The set design and cinematography do a good job at this, as well as the music and special effects that attempt to prop this story up. However, the vagueness of the story, the opening fight scene, and a large amount of convenient leeway into a quick and simple story don't really give me much incentive to enjoy the episode as much as I might have done when I was younger. I give Tooth and Claw a 4 out of 10. Is this exciting enough for you? Probably not. When the beast comes towards the Robert, why doesn't he just pry out the rest of the information from within Robert before throwing random assortments of books at people and putting some glasses on his face? No, that was awful. This therefore allowed this plan to unfold as conveniently as it did, even if there weren't any strict Jesus, this line is fucking cancer. I give Tooth and Claw a 4 out of 10. Oh, my lungs. Good job they found that book with the meteor crashing to Earth 300 years ago inside that may or may